Chapter 3. After lunch, Mrs. Solomon gets us to test out the theory of gravity in the gym by dropping balls from the top of the agility tables. It's like an experiment that this old Italian guy called Galileo did when he dropped cannonballs off the Leaning Tower at Pisa. She gets us all lined up holding different types of balls: basketballs, cricket balls, tennis balls and golf balls. She says that even though you might think that the heaviest balls would fall fastest and hit the ground first, gravity accelerates them all at the same rate, so the balls all hit the ground at the same time. That's the theory anyway. But then Minty pulled a ping pong ball out of her pocket, and when she dropped all the balls at the same time, Minty's ball hit the ground after everyone else's. Mrs. Solomon said that it was because the ping pong ball is very light, so it was slowed by air resistance. But I just think that the theory of gravity doesn't work when Minty's around. Stepping out of the school gates at the end of the day, I heard the beep of a horn. Turning round, my heart sinks when I see Grandad Neil waiting to pick me up instead of Mum. He leans out the driver's window of his van. "Come on, slow coach," he yells. "That lollipop lady says I can't park here." Dressed in a luminous yellow jacket, Mrs. Bagwell shouts angrily back at Grandad. "No, you can't. You're a danger to the children crossing. You shouldn't even be allowed on the road in that thing." Back in the 1980s, Grandad used to be the lead singer of a rock band called Death Panda, until a problem with his ears forced him to retire. He still drives his old tour van, and through this windscreen I can see Charlie crammed into her car seat in the back, waving an inflatable guitar above her head. But that's not what makes the lollipop lady tut as she glares at Grandad's bad parking. It's the huge mural that's painted on the side of the van. This shows a cartoon of a panda riding on the back of a nuclear missile that is heading straight for the sun. It's a pretty eye-catching picture. This was the front cover of Death Panda's first album. Global warming? This means war. As I reluctantly climb inside the van and the rest of my class streaming out of the school gates, I hear Aaron Johnson shout out, "Nice wheels, Jamie!" Everyone starts laughing. I duck down in the passenger seat to try and make myself invisible, but this doesn't work as Charlie just starts bashing me on the head with the blow-up guitar. Still leaning out the window, Grandad just raises his fist in the air, his index and little finger extended to form the sign of the horns. As he salutes the school with this heavy metal band gesture, I sink down further into my seat. Do you want me to give any of your friends a ride home?" Grandad Neil asks, flicking his long grey ponytail back as he squeezes his stomach behind the steering wheel. "There's plenty of room." Fastening my seatbelt, I quickly shake my head. Having a dad who's an astronaut is really cool, but Grandad is a serious embarrassment. "No, it's okay. I just want to go home." "Right you are then." With a shrug of his shoulders, Grandad turns the key in the ignition. "Let's hit the road." A tsunami of noise erupts from the speakers, almost drowning out the engine as it roars into life. "I'm a love missile, baby, and I shoot to thrill." I quickly jam my fingers into my ears, trying to block out the worst of the sound. In the back, Charlie squeals with delight, whirling the inflatable guitar around her head again as the thunderous sound of the Death Panda rings out. "The temperature is rising as I go for the kill." The van lurches away from the pavement, the lollipop lady flattening herself against the school gates as twin guitars squeal from the speakers. Glancing back in the side mirror, I can see her angrily shaking a stop sign before Grandad turns the corner and she disappears from view. Home for us is actually Grandad's house. Before Dad was an astronaut, he was in the RAF, and we just used to live on whichever Air Force base he was posted to. Mum and Dad never got round to buying a house. Most of the time they just rented a studio for Mum where she could make her sculptures and stuff while we lived in the family quarters. We moved a lot anyway, as the planes Dad flew got bigger and bigger. I went to 3 different schools before I was 8 years old, as he learned how to fly helicopters, spy planes and fighter jets. Then, Dad decided he wanted to become an astronaut, and that was when we really started racking up the air miles. Most of his basic astronaut training took place in Germany, and I had to go to an international school in Cologne. Then there was the underwater training in Florida, so that Dad could learn how to survive in an extreme environment, while I tried out the high G rides at Disney World. Before we headed to Moscow, where Dad learned to spacewalk, and I learned that I don't really like Russian food. That was where Charlie popped out, so her birth certificate says she was born in Star City. This is the name of the place near Moscow where all the astronauts and their families live while they're finishing their training. My birth certificate just says I was born in Swindon. So anyway, after Dad blasted off for the International Space Station, Mum brought me and Charlie back home to Britain, and we moved in with Grandad Neil. I don't know why we couldn't get our own house, but Mum said that Grandad would help look after us while she got back to work. I told Mum that I didn't need any looking after, but we still moved into Grandad's house. He bought it when he was big in the 80s, and since Grandma left him and moved to the States with her new boyfriend, he's been living there on his own. Now Mum's turned her old attic bedroom into an art studio, and he's up there most of the time working on a new sculpture. She's in the kitchen when we get home though, drinking a cup of tea in her paint-smattered smock. Charlie runs towards her with a happy squeal, shrieking with delight as Mum scoops her up and spins her around in the air. "I'm a spaceman," she cries. Mum rolls her eyes. "You mean you're a space woman?" Mum says as she brings Charlie back down to earth. "Don't forget, girls can be astronauts too." Then she gives me a smile as I shrug my rucksack off my shoulders and set this down on the kitchen table. "How was school?" she asks. "Fine," I reply, pulling out my homework folder. "I've just got to revise for my maths test tomorrow." From the back garden comes an ear-splitting squeal of feedback, and my shoulders sag as I realise what this means. Even though Grandad's rock star days are over, he still likes to go out to the barn to play his guitar, very, very loudly. There goes my chance of revising in peace. Seeing the pained expression on my face, Mum quickly shakes her head. "Don't start revising now," she says, raising her voice as the sound of the crunching guitar chord rings out and Charlie starts dancing around the kitchen. "Why don't you go get some fresh air first? I'll make sure Grandad finishes practicing by 6 and you can pick us all up some fish and chips on your way back." Mum pulls out a £20 note and pushes it into my hand. Grateful for the chance to escape, I quickly shove it into my pocket along with my revision worksheet as the deafening kerrang of another guitar chord shakes the kitchen window. I head for the door and the one place where I'm guaranteed some peace and quiet.